Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So in the last video, I ran Independence Trail from south to north with the TUbliss system. I'm on a 2021 Beta 300 RR Racing, and I have a front tubeless and a rear tubeless. The rear tubeless, we're doing a test with 0 PSI, so I've already ran it to the north. It did fabulous. In this video, I'm running it back to the south. We turn around at Patriot Trail and we come back to the north. And I do get very tired near the end, and yeah, I drop the bike and what have you. But how does the tubeless do with 0 PSI? I think it does fabulous. It's an amazing experience because you can run the tire. I'm running the Recon tire at this time on the back of this bike. And I can run it at 0 PSI and it just grips and molds around the rocks. The Recon tire is a hybrid tire, so it's soft and hard on, I guess, on the outside. I forget exactly, but it's a hybrid tire and it does really well, especially at 0 PSI, and it's like a $60 tire, so you can't really knock it. If you're on a budget, it's a great tire. Plus it has very big lugs, so it could work really good in muddy situations. I might even run this tire at the TKO this year to give it a whirl to see how it hooks up on some of the muddy areas like the hill climbs and what have you, where I will be able to dig in. And I might not run it at 0 PSI, the tubeless system, but I might run it like at, say, 1 or 2 PSI, just have a little in there, plus my tire jack tire sealant to make sure there is a small puncture or something, and just that everything's sealing around the rim and the system, you know. That way it seals any air coming out, and that should be, you know, make it that much better, much more reliable. And you want grip, so you want the lowest PSI you can. Well, with tubeless you can run it at 0. In fact, I have run at 0 quite a few times in my life, but this is like a dedicated video series. Part 1 was kind of just showing you more or less the trail because I had never run it from south to north, but it did great. This video is obviously me talking and doing a voiceover so I can explain, like, hey, you know, I'm hitting these rocks, I'm going down. Flowing down the trail like we have here is a lot faster. It is a slight downhill. Plus I know it like the back of my hand because I used to flow down this trail and connect into other stuff that we can't do anymore. So I'm left with going down and either going out, or with a lot of people, we like to go down to like the waterfall or Patriot Trail, turn around and go back, and it's just like a practice run. It's getting used to the boulders. It's a good area just to practice being in this type of terrain, right? The rocks. Plus I haven't been riding for a month, and I got sick again with COVID because of my daughter tested positive, and then I was sick and I had a fever, headache, and all that good stuff. Luckily, I think I did kind of lose my taste once again. It does seem to be off. And otherwise, though, my lungs are doing pretty good. It's just I haven't ridden for a month, got sick, and, you know, getting back on the bike. So this ride was my first outing. Well, the last ride riding up it was my first outing, then, you know, turning around and coming back down. And then turning around down here and going back up. And we just did this again just the other day. So I've been out twice now, and I'm getting better. I'm getting my endurance back slowly. It's just I'm going to have to work at this, right? When you have these long down periods and plus hit with a sickness, it's just you're going to have to build yourself back up. But the tubeless, like right here with the Recon at 0, man, it just grips. You know, it keeps me going. It's more my skill level at this point in me being tired and, you know, me recovering that and rebuilding my endurance that I'm struggling with. But I can tell the back end is gripping. You can kind of like feel it forming around the rocks, you know, when you're going slow and you're trying to tractor over something. So I really like the tubeless system, and I am somewhat biased here, you know. Tubeless has helped me out over the years. They have when I've rebuilt a bike, given me TUbliss. When I've gone loaner bikes, like when I had the Beta 500, I got a TUbliss system. And just for events and stuff, auctioning them off. So I am a little biased, but why I like them is originally I bought them and ran them, and they were good. And I had them on my XR650R, and I ran them for like 60,000 miles. And on one set, like without replacing the high pressure, without replacing the red, I'll call it the carcass, the what have you, the protective part, the sheathing, you know, that the high pressure goes into. And there's a built-in rim lock too, if you don't know that already. And I ran it on the XR650R all those years, dual sporting, doing single track, hitting trails not quite as hard as this as far as rocks, but just hitting a wide range of stuff. Jumping on the interstate, going 80 miles per hour, going 90, going 100. I never had an issue. Now, I'm not going to say you should do that because it is for off-road applications only, but in my experience, and this is just my experience here, you know, liability here, you do what you do, that's on you. But I used it in those ways, and it worked out for me. It might not work out for you in those manners. I find a lot of issues with the TUbliss tend to be the person that installs it. Now, they'll swear up and down that they followed the directions, and they did this, and they did that. Like, when I first install a TUbliss, I like really clean the rim, make sure it's clean, and make sure all the spokes are fine, you know, nothing's loose, nothing's poking out like a spoke out of the backside of a nipple. You don't want that. You don't want an inverted nipple. You do not want that. It doesn't look pretty, it doesn't feel good. So take care of any of those issues. If you have to, run like a sanding sponge. You can get at Home Depot in the paint department and the sanding department, you know, where they have sandpaper. They have like these sponges. You can get different grits. Just get like a fine grit one and then kind of run that through and then spray it off with, whether you use Simple Green, WD-40, what have you. Just clean that inner rim really well. Take a look at it. Make sure it looks fine. Make sure there's no burrs on the edge of the rim. If there are, hit that with some sandpaper and just smooth out any burrs before you install even just a tube. You know, but before you install the TUbliss, make sure all that is good, because you don't want to be dragging a tube across anything that might be a burr. And then you basically, after you clean it, you know, I like using Simple Green a lot, or WD-40. I kind of like just hose everything down with WD-40 a lot of times. But the tape I use, I should bring that up, because TUbliss has changed their tape over the years. It was kind of like a duct tape stuff material, and then they went to like this plastic material. I think that's how it still is now. I personally, no offense to TUbliss, I don't like that. I just cut a piece of duct tape, Gorilla Tape specifically is what I last used, and I cut it to the length I need, peel it for that length going around the tire, and I work it how they say, you know, loosely put it on and just massage it on and make sure it sticks and go all the way around. The reason why I like a duct tape type of product like Gorilla Tape or duct tape is that it's like a fabric and it's soft. It's not going to poke or cut the high pressure bladder. I find it works the best, and even if it kind of starts peeling up, it's a kind of like a fabric and doesn't matter. Whereas the other one, you're going around and it's kind of hard, the more plasticky type tape they use now to go around the rim, and I feel like that could cut the high pressure. So personally, this is just me, I have gone to using Gorilla Tape, cut it to the right width, put it on the center, over the nipples, all the way around the rim, do it loosely but kind of push it down and go around, and obviously lap the tape just a little bit so that way it holds onto itself better, because it's going to bond to itself pretty dang good. And you know, at some point, depending on the mileage and usage of your bike, you probably should go through and pull off that TUbliss system and then look at the tape, and if you have to, take it off and go ahead, clean the rim and put on new tape, which I'm probably due for actually, and I probably will be doing when I install the next brand new tubeless system that they sent me for the rear tire, because I've been doing this test and what have you, and I have wore out the red carcass. Now, I did have an experience in one of my videos probably a couple months ago, maybe a month ago. I guess it was a couple months ago now, folks, that I accidentally let the air out of the high pressure and not the main. So the main held for a little while, and I probably hit a rock and it finally kind of poofed it out. And then I was running on zero totally. No high pressure, no main chamber air. And the rim, the tire kind of came loose from the bead, but the rim lock, because I had it nice and snug, held everything in, and I just continued on with my ride and did one of these huge gnarly trails with huge boulders and what have you. And it was a fabulous. It really hooked up having nothing in there, but of course higher speeds with bumps, and it's kind of like, you know, you don't want to flat spot the rim. So, you know, I just went back to the truck at that point and then realized, oh, that's what I did. Oh my God, it's even on my video where I hit the wrong stem. So now when I go down on the bottom of the bike, you know, on the rim, and I'm checking pressure, I'm double checking. I'm mentally prepared, like, okay, that's the high pressure, that's the low pressure with the rim lock, that's the one I need to add air, release air, what have you. So that was a mistake, but it showed me that the tubeless system really does work. It showed me that their rim lock really does work and holds it on. Would you want to be in a race environment where you're trying to race with just that one rim lock? Probably not. It could come off the rim, right? I was more or less going through a boulder field like this in a straight line, more or less, without doing any high-speed turns. So the tire wasn't going to work itself off because it was being held on in one spot. It would be hard for it to kind of peel up over as long as you have one side pretty tight. If you actually, the tubeless would make a system that maybe had two rim locks, one on either side, wow, then you would probably be pretty much guaranteed that the tire would stay on that rim even if totally flat. I don't know if they could do that. I don't know if the install process would be just so difficult that no one would want to do it. You know, all these systems have their pluses and minuses. Tubeless's pluses are that you can run 0 PSI if you need to, but you can run customizable, right? If I needed to go jump and do on some roadways right from my house to go out to the dirt road, some trails that I know of, I can go ahead and, you know, toss in 15 PSI and feel confident being on the roadway with that PSI. I mean, I suppose I could put 20 PSI in it if I really wanted to, if it was like a dual sporting thing, if I was on a dual sport type bike. Of course, that gets into the legality and the disclaimer of you shouldn't be on the road. It's an off-road system. It's not tested for on-road. I personally have never had problems, but you, I guess, could have a problem, so don't blame them if you do something outside of the scope of what this is for. It's for off-road use. So you're in an environment like this, you're fairly safe, right? You don't have other vehicles around you. So I will be running tubeless for the foreseeable future. I have never had a problem. Now, knock on wood, if I am out on a big trip and have a problem, then maybe I will try the Nitro Mooses. I mean, NewTek/Tubeless is also Nitro Moose, same company. So they have some various options for you. So if you don't want to do the tubeless, then you can do the mooses. Now the mooses, you're going to get more of a dead feeling than a traditional tire because it's a more of a solid object in there. And the reason being is your tire works as kind of like your suspension. It's kind of like your car tires are a pretty important piece of your suspension to your vehicle. You know, if you have my truck tires at 55 PSI, which Ford recommends, it's like, I have my computer reprogrammed in the truck, so I usually run my tires at like 45, and that 10 PSI is a huge difference. Like, the roads smooth out, gravel roads smooth out, you know, it's just the tires flex more and you get a better ride. Well, same with a bike. You're going to get a better, smoother ride with a tubeless system or tubes than you will with like bibs or Nitro Mooses. It's your call what you want to run. There are thorns around. That's why I run the tire tire sealant. I feel that, you know, pretty much seals the tire up, works really well, even past the prime of it being in the tire. You know, it probably need to be refreshed, new tire sealant added, but it tends to work pretty well, I feel. And I have shown before in videos where thorns have gone through and you see little wet spots where the tire sealant has sealed those holes. Now it gets to a point where there's so many that you kind of do start maybe losing your PSI, you know, but it's a gradual loss. It's not like, oh no, it's like maybe I left it for a couple days in the garage, look at it, I see all the wet spots, I'm like, oh, I better check the PSI, top it off, go for a ride, and I'm good to go for that ride. Once again, I am biased with the TUbliss because, you know, they've helped me out and given me the systems for events to raise money for trail causes, auctioning them off and what have you, or door prizes, and thus I am biased. But I do feel it's a system that works if properly installed, and I think a lot of issues are they're not properly installed. I can remember when the brother-in-law got his cross trainer and it was a build your own beta. Now he got it second hand, but the person did a build your own beta. It had like hardly no miles on it or hours on it, and for whatever reason beta just used the opposite, like the rim lock on one side, instead of 5 spokes away having the other high pressure, they had it on the opposite side. Well, that's not how TUbliss New Tech says to install the system. So I feel that his issue, his failure, was because the valve stem ripped. Well, it's not where it should be per the directions. The build your own beta, when beta installed it, they were lazy. Instead of drilling another hole in the rim, they just went ahead and put the rim lock here, moved the tube around the high pressure, and put the on the opposite side, like a traditional rim locks system. And you can't do that. You have to follow the directions, and it has to be 5 spokes away. I believe it's 5 or 4, whatever the spacing is. But you'll see that in the directions, and you need it there. And I even think it through of like, well, if the rear tire is turning, the front tire is probably not as big of a deal, but the rear tire, if it's turning, you want the torque on the rim lock in that nipple, and then have the valve stem on the opposite. So that way the torque is on that one valve stem versus the high pressure, right? You don't want the high pressure it would be in front of it. But think it through, and I think you'll understand what I mean. And yeah, you just want to make sure when you set these up, you set them up in a way that, you know, how things work. And I don't know. It's just one of those things. Maybe it's hard to explain this, you know, doing a voiceover. And, you know, I'm talking from the heart. I have no notes in front of me. So just think it through when you're doing everything. And like I said, I like the duct tape / Gorilla Tape method versus, you'll see their tape is kind of like this plasticky hard stuff. I didn't like that at all. I found it came loose and it's rigid. It seems like that could cut the high pressure. I don't know. I personally didn't like that. I feel something soft in there, and especially when you're adding like the tire sealant, that will kind of, if you get some edge peel of your duct tape, Gorilla Tape stuff, you will that tire sealant will kind of soften out that cloth, and yeah, it makes it so it's not going to be rigid. Nothing's going to be razor sharp. So, you know, just something to think about. And as I'm riding here, it just works really well for this type of stuff. It gives you a smoother ride. You're getting a lot of grip, and you know, I just feel like, wow, you know, you can have no pressure in there and still run these trails. Now, maybe because I'm a slower rider, that's why I've had good luck. A faster rider might have issues. That is a possibility, something I'm not seeing. But I don't know. I mean, I will keep running this system. It just feels like chugging along on Independence Trail, hitting these rocks, having that tire flex around and be able to grab and just keep me going, I mean, that's what you want. You don't want to get stuck behind a rock and just sit there and rev and the tire's just not connecting, right? And you could run a super gummy. I mean, personally, I like the TUbliss right now. If I'm going the budget way with the Tusk T35 or T45 tire, those seem to be really grippy, but I'm pretty much going to try the 220 ride tires. They're also seem pretty gummy, and I want to see how they do. I mean, that should be coming up here probably in the next couple months. I'll give that a whirl. But overall, even with a worn out red carcass for the high pressure tube, I mean, it's down to the fabric or the metal, whatever the material is that's holding that together. It's down to that. The belt. If it was a tire, you'd call it the belt. So I'll call it the belt. That is worn out in spots. You'll see. I'll do a whole video of uninstalling and showing you the abuse. And I'm still running it, and it hasn't blown or anything. So no one's gotten mad at me like, oh, why are you running this? Well, A, I'm in a limited area, so getting out is pretty easy. If I need to get out, need to tow back to the vehicle, we're talking about a small part of somebody's day, right? I'm not on a big, long trail ride. Now, if I'm on a big, long trail ride, I want that new TUbliss system in the back where I know it's not bald at all. When you see this thing, when you see it, it's pretty bad. And I'm running it, and it's holding air, and it's allowing me to go down the trail. So, y'all, hopefully this video gives you encouragement to try the TUbliss system. But I do understand the people that are like, you know, I don't want to deal with any flats at all or any complications. I'm going to shove in a bib or a nitro mousse, and that way I can forget about it. I'll deal with the dead feeling. I'll drill out the rear. That way it's a little more squishy and this and that. You know, to each their own. I mean, those are good systems too. I think there's a lot of valid systems. It's just what you like. They have that fancy tube now with the two built-in rim locks, but that tube alone costs like $150, and it's like 7 mil thick. I heard it's a pain in the butt to install. I don't know if that's true because I haven't tried one, because it's $150 for a tube. It's bad enough when you buy an ultra heavy duty Michelin tube and you're spending like $30-40 and you're like, oh my god, for one tube. Because if you're running tubes properly, you should be changing tubes like every tire change. Most people don't. Even I did. I would go a few. With ultra heavy, I'd probably go like 4 tires and then I would change it. But, you know, you're supposed to like change your tubes all the time. Again, as we know, people don't do that. They were cheap. Most people are cheap, and I'm pretty cheap myself. And that's why I kind of like the TUbliss system. It kind of costs money, but at the same time, for me, it has lasted and lasted and lasted. So the expense is awesome. Where it seems my TUbliss outlasts people that have bibs and nitro mousses, because, you know, those get hot, go through heat cycles, and they start shrinking and what have you. And, you know, those are not cheap solutions either. And then now you have the new thing with the mousse balls. And the mousse balls, you know, supposedly even better system, supposed to last longer too, but you're going to have the same thing where, you know, shrinking over time. But with that system, kind of cool, because as, you know, maybe you need to replace some, you just replace those ones. You know, you don't have to replace everything, or maybe you add another one to keep it stiff. So that system kind of seems like even better than the solid, you know, big circle of a bib or nitro mousse, where, yeah, people cut chunks out and play that game, but if you have a set wedge already, then it's pretty easy. You just add a new wedge, right? Or pull out some old ones and put in some new ones and kind of run half and half. And you could probably take out an old one here, an old one there, skip every other one or something, and kind of make it stiffer again if you needed more stiffness because it just got so soft. And, you know, there's ways you could play around with that a lot more. However, those cost quite a bit of money. It costs a lot more too. TUbliss system for me keeps going, going, and going, like I'm showing. Like this thing, when you finally see the video of it completely worn out, you're gonna be like, oh my god, you were running that still and it was working. And yes, it was. And then that's the point. It shows that it works. And that's the point of this video, is to show that TUbliss does work if installed properly. And once again, I have to reiterate, most people don't install these correctly. So then, you know, they have problems, they bitch about it, and they moan about it, and this and that, and it really comes down to, well, who installed it? You installed it? Did you do it right? Because I've only ever had one new failure, and who knows why? Was it my fault? Was it the TUbliss? Was a high, you know, it was a high pressure issue. It was on that Beta 500. I had a front flat. That's the only time I've actually ever had an issue on the trail, which sucked. It was at Penrose, so it wasn't a big deal. I just motored it back to the truck and called it a day. Kind of wasted trip down there, but at the same time, things happen, right? If I was going further away, usually with the TUbliss setup, or if I was doing an event, I would actually take tubes with me and rim locks and just have that as a backup, right? Worst case, I got it as a backup. Or I suppose you can buy the high pressure tubes and you can take those with you. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed my voiceover. Check out the description. Please support the channel because there's links there. Go my Amazon affiliate link. Buy yourself TUbliss. Buy yourself some tires. Do your normal shopping, whatever it is, you know. Maybe it's your grocery shopping. Maybe you want a new TV or laptop or barbecue grill or whatever. Do your shopping after clicking on my link to Amazon, and I get a piece of the pie. And it's the best way to support a creator. Y'all stay well, take care, and have a good one. Bye.